books of the Bible. And starting this week, we're going to delve into the book of Exodus. So we'll be starting with the first chapter of Exodus in this book. We got another Bible study that we do. So we have 2 Bible studies a week. We have one on Wednesday at 6:00, which deals with different topics. And those are also series of different topics, depending on relationship, finance, fatherhood, motherhood, siblings, friends, family, you name it. We're going to be dealing with those topics on Wednesday. But today we're going to be dealing in Exodus, the book of Exodus. As we all know, I'm going to start back I'm going to take us back a little bit to Genesis 49. And in chapter 49, we have Jacob. Jacob is dying. And as you remember from the story, Jacob had 12 sons. One of his sons was gifted with the ability to interpret dreams. And he was able to interpret dreams, which his name was Joseph. And Joseph's brothers were very jealous of him. And by them being very jealous of him, they became jealous. And one day I think they were out sheeping or doing something. And Joseph had came to them to tell them a dream. And he told them that they bowing down to him and so forth and so on. And, they took him and first they threw him into a ditch, into a hole. And then they saw some travelers coming by. And when the travelers came by, these were merchants. And during those times, merchants would sort of like they were traveling salesmen. They traveled around. That's where they made their money back then or made a living. They sold Joseph into slavery. They sold Joseph to them. And they ripped up his garments, which Judah, I think Judah was the oldest brother who was the one who kept him from they wanted to kill him at first, but Judah decided to put him in a ditch. Then they decided to sell him. So they sold him off. They went back. They took his coat. There's a song called The Coat of Many Colors. And it was basically sung by, I think, a country artist, Dolly Parton, who sung it. Very, very beautiful song. So took it back to Jacob. And Jacob, he's distraught because now his son, he loved Joseph. So Joseph was taken off to Egypt. And while he was in Egypt, he was, treated just like any slave was treated, but he was able to interpret dreams. And at a certain particular time, being locked up with I think it was the captain of the guards and the baker, and they both had dreams, and they didn't know what the dreams meant. So Joseph told them, "Well, tell me." And when they told Joseph, one was he saw a cup and such, and he says, "Oh, the cup represents this and this and this. You're going to be restored back to your status." The baker was told that he saw birds picking at meat, and he told him, "You will be beheaded." So in that process, Joseph, the butcher later on, the baker, he was beheaded. The guard was restored back to his status. Now comes the fact. Now this is where a lot of people don't understand. With God, he's always in control. He always has a plan. He always has a purpose for his people. And when I'm saying for his people in this term, in this day and age, when I'm saying for his people, I'm talking about all people, all race, colors, creed, nationality, don't care. Well, I'm going to say all nationality. There's no such thing there's only one race, and that's the human race. So I'm going to say all nationalities and all of all. Those that believe in the one God the creator of the heavens and earth. So that's what I mean by his people. But for the book's sake, his people now is Israel, which will be Israel soon. But God has promised Abraham. Now remember the book earlier in Genesis. He promises Abraham that Abraham will be the father of many nations. There's two sons. There's two sons in the womb, and they will. He says, well, you're going to have. Abraham. He has Abraham, and he will be the father of many nations. God lets him know that you're going to be the father of many nations because he tells Abraham, he makes this covenant, this promise, this contract. It says, look up at the stars, Abraham. How many stars do you see? Abraham says there's too many to count. So he has Isaac. You have Jacob. Jacob has 12 sons. Now these 12 sons, one goes off to Egypt. Now the other 11 are left behind. Now the one in Egypt, he begins because of his able to process and interpret dreams. The Pharaoh at that time had a dream, and he called all his sorcerers and wise men to interpret the dream. So they tell me your dream, and I'll be able to interpret it. But they would tell him the dream, so they would tell him what he wanted to hear, and he didn't want that. He wanted to be told exactly what this dream meant, not something he's thinking. He wanted to know what it really meant. Now, the guard who was restored back never said anything about Joseph that was still in prison. But this is how funny God works. The guard figured, okay, I'm free. I'm restored. So I'm not going to tell about the guy who told me this was going to happen. I'm going to leave him there. So God makes it known that you're going to have to tell about Joseph that's still in the dungeon or in this prison. And the guard says, well, the man that you have locked up, he can interpret dreams. So Pharaoh tells him to bring him to him. Bring Joseph to me. When Joseph comes, he tells Pharaoh what's the dream. Pharaoh, here's the dream, such and such and such and such. Now what he's telling Pharaoh is he's telling him about the famine that's coming, famine that's coming. So now he's now becoming a big person in the house of Pharaoh. He's becoming a status among the house of Pharaoh. So he's being able to save the wheat. Now, back with Jacob and his sons, he is now telling his sons because he's beginning to die. And he's telling his sons so forth. And so he's starting to get ready to die. But before he dies, the he sends them off to Egypt to get wheat. They come there, they meet Joseph, but they don't recognize Joseph. So they really don't remember. They haven't seen him in a while. So now he's dressed in all his Egyptian garment and everything. So they really don't recognize him. Maybe his features is not, he probably may gain weight. They really don't say why they don't recognize him, but they just don't really recognize him. So he kind of gives, in a sense, if you're reading the story, he kind of gives them hints who he is. He's kind of giving them hints because he can talk in their tongue, and they're not thinking wisely about it. So okay, he sits them down to dinner. He sends them all, he sends them down, but he sits them down from the oldest to the youngest, and they're wondering how do he knows who's the oldest and who's the youngest. Still haven't caught on. They eat. He gives them the bond, the wheat and everything, the stuff to survive. He tells him to go. Now he makes one. I think in this story, I'm kind of going from memory right now because we're going to get into the fruit has increased. He kind of uh, gets them he kind of gets one to stay behind, right? He does. They leave. They're going to leave, and he puts like a cup or something that's valuable, that has some value, and they leave. And then he sends his guards after them, and guards bring them back, and he finds the cup amongst one of them, and he brings them. Now, remember, Benjamin is back with Jacob. So they go back to get the younger brother. They bring the younger brother back. Okay, so now they send them back. So when they bring Benjamin back, he sends them back, but this time he sends them back because because Jacob, Joseph knows that if Benjamin is the youngest of them, and if Benjamin stays, Jacob's going to come. So in other words, he wants all of his family to come to see him. So in this set, he comes and gets all his family to come and see him, and they're glad and happy to see him. And the ironic thing is God saved his family by Joseph. By what they did, they were able to save their own family without realizing it. But also, it shows that God has a hand in everything that he does. So, with the fruit increase, now coming to where we talk on the fruit has increased. Jacob is dying. He tells his sons what is to become of each of them. He's sort of like, prophesying what is going to happen to them. He's kind of telling them because of who they are and the way they are, what is going to be of them in the last days, in this last moment. So he passes away. They take him to be buried next to his wife where Sarah is. And now we also in Egypt, we have Joseph. Joseph has gone away. Joseph has passed. But also with Joseph passing, we have the Pharaoh that was with Joseph. He passes. Now there's a new sheriff in town, a new Pharaoh. He didn't know anything about Joseph. So Joseph passed away. So in this, we're looking at Jacob and his 11 sons, and Joseph has passed already. So now we're in Exodus 1, and we're verse 1 all the way through 22. So if you read chapter 1 all the way through 22, you read chapter 1, you'll get the gist of what the story is going to be about, and you'll get the understanding of what I was saying, why the fruit is increased, and God's sovereignty in this. Now, the Israelites, because now as they grow, they're the Israelites. It's 12 tribes. It's 12 tribes. So the Israelites are now in Egypt. Well, they're Hebrews at this point in time. And the Pharaoh notices that they're growing. They're substantially increasing in numbers. Now, when they come in this territory, this region of Egypt, it's 70. In this house of Jacob, there's 70. There's 12 sons, and it's 70 of these families. So in this, the Pharaoh sees that they have grown. They are grown. And he's kind of like feeling like, well, if they grow in the numbers that they grow, if they turn against us and join our enemies, they could overthrow us. So we must do something to keep them from overthrowing us, and overthrowing us in our likeliest things. So the Pharaoh increases the the work that they do, the tasks that they do, the bricklaying, the brick making and the bricklaying. So he increases it and burdens them and oppresses them more. But nevertheless, always remember, God has a hand in all of this. He has a way of controlling everything, even in his darkest moment. So, as we see in this, the Israelites are, they feel like it's the last hope because everything is seems like it's against them. But God has everything under control. His sovereignty is over all things, and his plan will eventually prevail. Whatever plan he has, no man can deviate that plan. No man will ever change it because he has a plan for it, and it will come to pass what he decides to come to pass. As we look at the story of Jacob's sons, Joseph, we can see how God uses even the most unlikely circumstances to fulfill his purpose. Now remember, they sold Joseph off into slavery. They did not know there was a famine coming. But by them selling him off into slavery and Joseph going into Egypt and now becoming into the Pharaoh's house, telling the guard and the butcher what was going to happen to them. And the butcher now, Pharaoh getting to see this vision, none of his sorcerers or wise men can tell him what this vision is. The guard now has to tell Pharaoh, well, the man that you got in prison can interpret dreams. Now Joseph comes up and he interprets his dream for him. Okay? Here's God's plan. Right in full view. We're going to save, I'm going to save this promise, this covenant that I made Abraham, even though the 12 sons, even though these 11 boys have put one of the sons away to be a slave. So now, as we see that, we see this. Joseph's brothers may have an intended to to harm when they went to sell him off, but God made the greatest plan in store. He has his plan in store. Though Joseph rise to power in Egypt, God was able to save his family from the famine and bring about his redemption. Okay, so there we see that. Okay, it also seems that in this also, in the same way, God can use our struggles and our trials for his glory. How many times have you been in a situation, don't see no way out, and then all of a sudden you get a phone call or you get a text, and that text is your way out? How many times have you been in a position where you don't see yourself getting better in things, maybe health wise, and all of a sudden you're like, well, there's no saving me. I'm too far gone. And then here comes a doctor on the door. Says, well, I can get this thing solved for you. And then another doctor comes and they talk and they say, yeah, we can do this. How many, how many times have a friend called you up? You wasn't planning to go nowhere, but your friend called you up, got you out the house just before your house probably burned down. You say, oh, it's a coincidence. Maybe not. Maybe it was God telling you to get out of this house and I want you to be over here because I need you in this position to follow this. And then right after that happens, you wind up getting a different house and a newer job. And you wasn't even looking for a new job. God's hands, God's fate. Some people just say, it's a coincidence. Or it's just the way the universe works. Sometimes I say, however people feel, let them feel that way. They'll sooner or later they understand, but they feel it's crazy to think this way. But I'm gonna, I kind of like have a little different way of view. God has a way of making you understand that he is there and he's got his hands on everything and anything that we do, whatever we do, wherever we are. It doesn't matter. He's got his hands on it. He has control of everything. There's nothing we can do to alter it. We may try. If you look in we read the book of Jonah, you see God told him back then, go to Nineveh. Jonah was like, no, I'm not going to no Nineveh. Go to Nineveh. I'm not going to no Nineveh. He go here, go there. What's that? He's found in the belly of the what? The belly of the beast. Now, what else do we call the belly of the beast? Some people call belly of the beast is when they're locked away in prison and they got to fight each and every day. Some people say that's the belly of the beast when you come out. You come out a changed. Sometimes we come out a changed person. We come out for the better or we come out for the worse. It just also took what's up here. But when you read this book here, this book, whether I'm going to say this to the people that non-believers, this book has life. It gives you life. It can give you hope. It can give you life. It can inspire you. You just have to be able to pick it up, read it for yourself, study it for yourself. You will get the answers that you need, that you seek. So, in the book, in going back to Exodus, in this, we also see that God's hands is on everything. So, let us look at how God controlled everything. Let's look at it first. Joseph has his 12 sons. I said Joseph. Jacob has his 12 sons. He gives Joseph the gift of being able to interpret dreams. He also allows Joseph to be thrown in a ditch, a hole, been taken out, given to some merchants to be sold off into slavery. He's sold off into the house of Egypt with the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh's wife accuses him of rape. He gets away with he's able to survive that. He saves one of the prisoners that the Pharaoh sent to the prison, and the other one he tells him you're gonna be beheaded. He tells the Pharaoh his dream. He interprets his dream, and the Pharaoh releases him and allows him to be he rises up within the Pharaoh's household, which saves him and saves his family. Now, new Pharaoh in town, he increases the things on the Pharaoh and everything. So now he is comforted. This Pharaoh is comfort. And this Pharaoh doesn't know what's going to happen. So with this sovereignty, we are sure, it is assurance that God himself is always in control, even when things seem is out of hand. And let us do this. Let us take comfort in knowing that God's plan for us are greater than we can even imagine. Whatever plan he has for us, we could never imagine it. Like I would tell you, I never would imagine myself as a minister. I never looked at myself as a minister. Oh, when I went to church when I was young, I went to church. Some of my cousins and kids, oh, you look like a minister. And some of them would say, oh, you look like a lawyer. Or you look like an undercover cop. I was like, now, cop, lawyer, I say yeah, because I love history. I love law. Matter of fact, I was an armed security officer, and I had to study law, former auxiliary police officer as well in New York City. So I kind of basically understand the legality of law. Love Law and Order, the original, the first one, the first series. But watching this and doing this and seeing this, this is what you you say God has his hand now. He pushes me into ministry. Now I'm a minister. I minister, I took to do a Bible study on Facebook with a content creator by the name of Lady Red, Detroit Lady Red on Facebook. You probably seen us on there. Now we do Monday and Thursday at 7 o'clock. Very good Bible study. We read the whole book from Genesis to Revelations, and now we're in the book of Job. So, with that being said, God had his hands on it. Late a couple of months ago, just this past month, I was installed as a pastor for God and Jesus Christ Ministries, which I started about a year now. We're still working on things. Our little podcast, we got a podcast going. Now you see we got a visual going. We got a 24/7 radio station going, World Gospel Radio, which is going 24/7. We got the RBM Smooth Radio, which Sunday mornings at 9 to 11:30. Sometimes from 9 all the way to probably about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we play music. We schedule the Sunday gospel. This Sunday we like to do it. It's the first Sunday we try to do a whole day of worshiping, and then the last day of the month we do the whole worshiping. We have our Sunday our podcast, which you can go to and read the scriptures, get your inspirational word, get your morning prayer, your night prayers. We have a request prayer line where you can go to. So we have various and other things. Our website, we have a website that's up there. I'm still working on it from time to time. So let me get back to this and finish this up for you. So we can never imagine this. So just as he multiplied the Israelites in Egypt, he can also multiply our blessings and bring about redemption in our lives. So our blessings, our redemptions, he can bring that back to life. He can bring that to the greatest of things for us. So let us trust in his sovereignty and rest in the knowledge that he is always with us, guiding us through every season of our lives. May we be encouraged by the story of Jacob's sons and Joseph, and may we always remember that God's sovereignty reigns supreme. Amen. Now, like I said, God's sovereignty, God's plan for us, God's grace, it's all there for us. It's just for us to embrace it. A lot of people fight against it because a lot of people think it's different. But when you pick up the book and you read it for yourself, and you study the words, and you study, as they say, study to show yourself approved. You get to understand. Now, one thing you must understand, you can't take the words that they say back then and say, oh, that's what they mean now. No, you have to look at what the word meant to them back then. Because the word to them, certain words that were said back then, it has a different meaning now. So if you were to travel back there and say a slave back then was not what we consider the slaves of 1800. In America, they were different. They were more of an indentured slaves. They were slaves that were caught in battle. and became slaves. They were slaves that sold themselves to provide for their family. That's a way of showing they were not called employees like we do now. We call ourselves employees. But you get the point. You go to a man and you ask him, can you have a job? He says yes. He asks you how much you work at, how much you what are you looking to be paid? And you tell him, well, I'm looking for $300 a week, or I'm looking for $400 a week, or I'm looking for $1,000 a week. That's what they did. They were not put on auction blocks and sold. Now, when they were battle, so this is how it is. You are a slave if you're caught in a battle. If you're caught in a battle, now you're their slave. But they were not what they call cattle slaves. Okay? But we must read the book for ourselves. We must understand the book for ourselves. We must get into the book, study the book for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Do your own. I always say to people, do your own research. When you read the Bible, and we're gonna do Exodus. When I see you Saturday night, the following Saturday, we're gonna do Exodus chapter 2, verse 1 through 25. We're gonna do 3 chapters: chapter 2, chapter 3, and chapter 4. But we're gonna be reading in chapter 2, 1 through 25, and chapter 3, we're going to do 1 through 15, and in chapter 4, we're going to do 1 through 13. And the topics of these chapters will be the calling, the irony, and the excuse. So the excuses, so we'll get into those depths. And like I said, being uh, reading Exodus, you will get to understand who were the children of Israel, who were the Hebrewites, who were the Hebrews of that time, what were the Hebrews of that time. Get into your Bible, get a Bible study book along with it, so you can get the understanding of various words, what the words mean, what the names of the people meant, because that's also important. Back then, when they gave people names, their names meant something. Like my name, Michael, if I'm not mistaken, it's a gift of God, gift from God, or a gift of God. Like that, is something like that. But you get to understand certain words were of a Hebrew descent. Certain words, if you ever read the New Testament, certain words were Greek or Greek. Some words were partial or Latin, depending on what book you get. Most of us now, we read the English translations, like the New King James, the NIV, those books. But I always suggest that people grab the Old King James, read the Old King James, then go maybe to your other books. Compare the books, and just see. You see, there's no different, but see how they translated a certain word to another word, but it keeps the same content, the same meaning. The same meaning, you should still get the same understanding when you read the book. But this is what Joseph had done. This is what God decided to do for Joseph. Joseph, you're going to go into Egypt. You're going to interpret these dreams. You're going to save your family, and everything's going to be fine. I'm going to keep the covenant with Abraham. Abraham's descendants will still be under the covenant because I kept it in place for you. Because God will able to, not just able, but his hand on it made everything possible. Even though Joseph has passed on, the Pharaoh at that time was not able to, he's changing things as we see the narrative. He's putting more weight on them, but God is constantly increasing the Israelites. He's increasing them and increasing them. It's the same thing. The more pressure, we're put on. Because a diamond, let me just take it like this. When a diamond is made, a diamond, you don't, well, excuse me, dig up a diamond and find it and you just brush off. A diamond, whatever it is, it's black as coal from what I understand. And it's pressure treated. It's pressure. And then you crush it and then it becomes a diamond. And that is what it is. We are diamonds. We are diamonds. And right now, God's sovereignty is working for the Israelites that are in Egypt. And then when we get into the second chapter, that's where it becomes the birth of Moses and the flee to Midian. So I'll see you Saturday, next Saturday, same time, 6 o'clock. Once again, I'm going to let you know, we have our 24-hour music, gospel music, 24 hours of gospel music, all genres of gospel music, from the Christian music all the way to rap and country music. So you'll hear different styles of gospel music. It's 24/7. It's 24/7 World Gospel Music. I mean World Gospel Radio is our station. World Gospel Radio. Go to worldgospelradio.com and you can listen. If you have a song that you would like to hear, just send me an email at ministermatthews@yahoo.com. If you want a prayer, send me an email at ministermatthews@yahoo.com or send it on to our prayer line at 833-943-3973. That's our request prayer line. Once again, that's 833-943-3973. And also, you can check out our podcast where you can get our Sunday sermons, our day prayer, our night prayer, our word of inspiration, and you can probably get a couple of scriptures that you probably can read there. And you'll also get the book of the Bible study. You'll get information on the Bible study, because we're going to be putting the Bible study also up on the podcast. Okay. Until then, and our podcast is on Spotify. So if you have Spotify, you can look it up and listen to us. Listen to it. You can listen to the Sunday sermons from the beginning of our first time coming on air till the present. And until then, may God bless you and may you keep well. Heavenly Father, as we leave this journey, cover each and every person that's watching this live, each and every person that is on this live. Let it resonate for what we have read and let it resonate what we have talked about. Let it touch those ears that have heard your word and let it resonate within their heart. And I say this in Jesus' name.